Hello, I'm Adam Wren,
And I'm Megan Messerly. It's Wednesday, July 16th.
and this is the Playbook podcast. And as you can hear, we have Politico White House reporter extraordinaire Megan Messerly here with us today in Dasha's stead. Great to have you, Megan. Thanks so much for taking time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
So, without further ado, here are the topics driving the day. First up, the battle for the future of the Democratic Party will come into sharp focus in Washington today on a few different fronts. There is, of course, the progressives versus moderates fight. This morning, Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City, comes to DC for a breakfast event being hosted by Representative Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. Bernie Sanders is also expected to meet with Mamdani. Megan, this comes as Democrats in primaries throughout the nation are battling it out right now over whether the party should take a more progressive populist approach. What are you hearing from your sources? It seems like there's a real conversation happening between sort of elites and populists here in the background.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And I mean, this is sort of a tale as old as time, but I think we're seeing the latest iteration of this fight come into sharp relief here. On the Trump side of the equation, I think the White House and the president are more than happy to see the Democrats lean in on the progressive side. That's partly what the president and the White House believes helped them win the election in 2024. The fact that Democrats went too far to the left. So they're more than happy to have Democrats continue in that direction. And yet there is this real tension here for the Democrats of how they deal with the populist movement, what it looks like to try to win back, if they can, some of these working class voters. And so that's a very real tension there between you want to be authentic and working class and speak to the frustrations of working people and high prices. But at the same time, you don't want to be perceived as so progressive that you're out of touch with the day to day struggles of working folks.
Which brings us to the second topic for today, the continuing cascade of political news from the DOJ's non-release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Our colleagues Nick Wu and Elena Schneider have some sharp new reporting on this front, drawing on some internal Democratic memos and polling, suggesting that the issue is breaking through. And it's not just Democrats piling on here. We heard Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday call for the DOJ to release the Epstein files. This story just doesn't seem to be going away no matter what Donald Trump does, Megan.
It really isn't, much to the president's chagrin. It's the last thing that the president and the White House want to be talking about right now. You hear the very palpable frustration in the president's voice when he's asked about this again and again, like he was yesterday when he flew to Pennsylvania. He was asked about Jeffrey Epstein. He wants to be talking about the big domestic policy bill he just got through Congress. He wants to be talking about his tariffs. Arguably, those are a little complicated right now, but he loves talking about tariffs. He does not want to be talking about Jeffrey Epstein. But it is this really challenging moment, I think, for the MAGA movement because unlike other issues that have come up, this is very much internecine warfare within the MAGA movement. And that makes this really hard to deal with, especially when you have folks in the administration who have been stoking these conspiracy theories about Jeffrey Epstein for years and now are trying to move their base away from that. That does not happen overnight, right? Especially when you've been telling those folks the deep state is covering things up. And then very quickly you're saying, no, no, nothing to see here. We're all good. Naturally, that's going to ring false to a lot of people. I think the question is how big of a segment is that group of folks? The message that, I've been hearing consistently from the White House is this is a very small group of very online folks who really care about this. If you think about it, the average person's not thinking about Jeffrey Epstein. They're like, am I going to be able to afford my groceries? That's a very valid concern. But at the same time, there is a potential political liability here, especially as we think about this coalition that President Trump has knit together.
Speaking of very online people, Vice President J.D. Vance is in Pennsylvania today, actually trying to sell the big, beautiful bill. We saw President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania earlier this week for an economic announcement that was pretty significant, all things considered, around AI with Senator David McCormick. I'm fascinated by the effort, the split screen happening, the effort to get outside of Washington and sell this big, beautiful bill. I mean, how would you assess Trump's ability to change the narrative on Epstein? It just doesn't seem like he's able to do that.
No, it really has been a struggle here, which is pretty surprising because the president is pretty darn good at controlling the narrative. If anything, that's what he's known for. But again, I think the challenge here comes down to the fact that this is something that he and folks who are now members of the administration have been talking about for so long that it's really hard to shift the conversation away from that. This is the time when the president would love to be taking a victory lap here, not talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And yet, the salience of this issue, the controversy, the president keeps saying it's a boring issue, but there is a lot of mystery and intrigue surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. And so I think that's what's captured a lot of the attention of the MAGA base. And that's why it's so hard to pull them off of this.
And our final topic tonight is an area where the president actually has had some success. He's proved pretty adept in whipping support for any number of his legislative proposals in Congress. And we're seeing some policy discussions unfold this week. In the House, Speaker Johnson is teeing up a big crypto vote today. In the Senate, the rescissions debate is ongoing. That's the attempt by the Trump administration to claw back billions in funding that Congress has already approved, including for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and NPR. But in a procedural vote last night, we got a sign some Republicans aren't on board. Collins, Murkowski, and McConnell all voted against moving the package out of committee, though it ultimately did after Vice President J.D. Vance broke the tie, advancing it on a 51-50 vote. Megan, Republicans on the Hill are not used to really publicly opposing Trump. Why did we see this time?
I think there's a couple different factors here. I mean, one, just on the pure policy side of this, there's been very significant concerns among some folks on the Hill about this PEPFAR funding, the global HIV/AIDS funding that is being now restored and taken out of the package. There's also been a continued push for more detail and more specificity about what's in the rescissions package. So I think that's part of it. But one of the things that's striking to me is the broader framework in which this rescissions conversation is happening. I think about the fact that this is a request from the president going back to Congress saying, hey, you budgeted this money, let's axe it now, right? It's sort of asking Congress to go back on something they did. It's within his power to do that. It's within Congress's power to decide whether or not they do want to cut those funds. And I think that presses on a lot of the broader fiscal concerns. But at the same time, I really do see this as teeing up further fights on congressional versus presidential authority. If Congress does not move forward with this rescissions package, the White House and the president have made very clear that they're more than happy to just not spend this money. And then that tees up a fight over impoundment and what the authority is of the executive branch and the president to simply not spend money that Congress has appropriated. And so, I see some very real tension points emerging here. On one hand, Republicans wanting to show this fiscal conservatism, show that they're making some of these cuts, which are a fraction of the 1 trillion cuts that were promised through DOGE, but to still show some commitment toward that goal. But at the same time, they have concerns about their own authority. And does this go too far? And so I think these two things are really butting heads here. And I think that's why we're seeing this play out maybe in a different way than we've seen the congressional presidential relationship play out so far this term.
This fight over impoundment and executive authority on spending, that's a fight for months that the Trump administration has been relishing. Is that right? They want to have this fight.
They do. And Russ Vought, OMB director, he has been thinking about this for years. People tell me, he's literally the guy who pores over budget documents on the weekend for fun. He's like very wonky about this kind of stuff, but very serious about it. And he has long wanted to take this impoundment fight through the courts. Common wisdom is that he's finding the right issue on which to do it. It's just a question of what issue. It's more a question of when, not if. And so this is all sort of the broader context in which this rescissions package discussion is happening.
Well, certainly a fight that we'll be watching as it unfolds. We always like to finish the podcast with something fun. And tonight at 7:35 p.m., the Congressional Women's Softball game will kick off. And this year, the members of Congress have a bunch of new blood on their team, while the frequently victorious team of journalists, known as the Bad News Babes, are largely putting up repeat champs, as Roll Call has reported. Send us your tips, birthdays, or spotted moments to playbook@politico.com. Megan, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And that's all for today's Playbook podcast. We have much more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a great Wednesday.